I myself probably spend an equal amount of time now in Claude Code as I do in Figma. Instead of handing off a Figma mock to an engineer, I'll hand them like a draft PR that I have with like a description of what I was trying to do. So right away, I say like, from my eye, I can tell, oh, this doesn't look exactly how the app I designed did, right? There's all these little details. And so this is actually where I spend most of my time in Claude Code, last 10% of polish. At Anthropic, anyone can code, and it's such a collaborative environment that I feel like our roles don't matter.
You have like another slide where you have this like whole flow diagram. Can you walk through this one too?
Yeah, definitely. So,
okay, welcome everyone. My guest today is Meaghan. As a design lead for Claude Code, Meaghan not only designs features, but also ships to prod on a regular basis. And I'm really excited to talk to her about how AI can help designers work faster and get her to demo her exact workflow to go from design to prototype. So welcome, Meaghan.
Thanks so much. I'm super excited to be here. And yeah, just really excited to talk about how I use Claude Code myself.
Yeah. All right. So I guess let's start with this. How does it feel to be finally a designer who ships to prod on a regular basis?
Honestly, it feels a little terrifying and simultaneously very magical. I think, over the years, I've always really just been interested in development, but it felt like at the time, especially when I started my career, you really need to hone your craft in either design or either development. It was just hard to bridge the gap between both unless you were a really special unicorn.
Mm-hmm.
And then just in the past, I'd say like 5 years, it just became so much easier to code. And all those like little details that I always felt I couldn't really ask my engineers because it'd be a P2 or it would take me a really long time to set up and fix. I can just ship them and have them. And so like that really polished product that you always want is just there and ready for you. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, exactly. I always feel bad asking my engineers, like, hey, can you tweak like 5 different copies
Exactly.
or like make this pixel change or something? and yeah, now you can just do it yourself, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And sometimes, I think when you're actually porting designs or something that you have in this idea into prod, and then you actually see it, you're like, oh, that actually didn't look how I thought I would. And then you feel even worse asking them to change it back or changing it again. And this just gives you the power to do it all yourself.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So maybe you can walk through like the entire design process and where like AI and Cloud Code can help.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Definitely. So I would say for me, I actually have a slide for this I can share, which is really useful. Let me share my screen right now. There's a few different ways my workflow has changed. I would say a big one that I have is I would bucket it into 3 big workflows that I now use Claude Code for specifically. This first one is one that I think folks who are maybe less technical reach for the most often. And it's one that you can do even in Claude AI today with artifacts without needing necessarily the code tool on top of it. And this is 0-to-1 exploration. So you can kind of explore new ideas, but very often this is kind of in a silo and it's not necessarily in your code base. I think the superpower of these 0-to-1 explorations, if you're doing it in Claude Code, is that it can actually be in the code base and understand your code and where it fits. And so it's a lot more real than doing just it on a side on a prototype. And then the other 2 workflows that I do most common now are to, I'll go to the third one here, actually understand the code base. Often when I'm developing a new feature or I'm working on a new project, I'll actually spend my first pre-brainstorm era asking Claude about how it currently works, how it was implemented today, down to like even what the system prompt is and how it's configured, how it's architected, to really understand the use cases. Sometimes I'll even ask Claude, like, how would you design this differently? And then there's a phase where I'll go into Figma and then do the designs. And then I'll go back into code once it's ready. And I'll kind of do the final polish pieces. If an engineer has built a lot of the infrastructure that needs to be there, or sometimes I'll try it myself at a first stab and see how far I can get with Claude Code.
Got it. Okay. And you probably do the understanding code base and building the code more, right? Like working on a more mature feature, right?
Definitely. I would say this first bucket, I like rarely do at work. It's something that I do maybe myself in my personal time and personal projects. But when it comes to working as a designer, like with my engineering team, with a product team, I'd say 90% of my time is spent on the latter 2 use cases here.
Awesome. And I think you have like another slide where you have this like whole flow diagram, like explore, Yeah,
I
that one.
do.
Can you walk through this one
I
too?
do. Yeah, definitely. So I think like this is where you get a little bit more granular into what these actually feel. I kind of broke this out into what the typical kind of design process looks like, you know, the double diamond of like explore and discover, then design, then prototype, then you kind of polish and you finish. And so I think the way I look at it is Claude Code, a lot of people will assume it's really only for development. And so maybe in like step 4 and 5 here. But I think step 1, 2, and 3 are actually where Claude Code shines for non-technical folks, just because it lets you do a lot of, I would say, like technical adjacent tasks or like engineering adjacent tasks because you have access to the code base. I actually think 1, 2, and 3 here is something that even our very technical customers do in Claude Code that they don't even realize they're doing because it's just so easy to get started. And that's really, you know, exploring different solutions that you could understand, exploring the history of why something was implemented the way it was, and then planning and like sequencing how you can break out building different features. The reason I like to do this more in Claude Code actually than in Claude AI, although I'll often go back and forth in between the two, is that as a designer, our job is really to kind of take all the information, all the feedback from all different parties, including our users, including engineers, including our product managers, and translate that to a working product experience. But that working product experience is in code. So the faster you can understand how it's going to get implemented in code, the more realistic it's going to be of representing what the actual product experience is.
Yeah, like I think the code is the source of truth, right? And like I don't know, I spent like 10 years building products, and I always noticed that I write like a spec and a PRD, and then whenever the Figma is actually ready to go, like people don't look at my spec anymore because Figma is a lot more higher fidelity than the spec, and then eventually they move into the actual code. And like with this process, you can basically go into the code directly, right? You can start making prototypes, exploring the code directly.
Exactly, exactly. In fact, sometimes in the past, instead of handing off a Figma mock to an engineer, I'll hand them like a draft PR that I have with like a description of what I was trying to do and where I wasn't able to get to completion myself. Cause at the end of the day, a lot of stuff is still quite difficult if you're not very coding knowledgeable. And so it just is really a great starting point to developing features a little bit further down the process than you typically would.
And now you're like a trusted member of the team, right? But like when you join the team, how did you get engineers or like get people to give you like GitHub access and like start doing this stuff? What kind of conversations do you have?
I think at Anthropic, anyone can code and it's such a collaborative environment that I feel like our roles don't matter. So here it was actually very easy. In fact, I'd say the team was super excited when they saw that I wanted to do this. A lot of the designers code even themselves. So even, before we had Claude Code directly integrated, you would see a lot of designers make PRs and kind of do it themselves.
Okay.
At past companies, where it's a little bit harder, maybe a little bit toned down, part of my process is actually to sit down with an engineer and have them pair program with me for a day because honestly, different repositories are set up so differently. I'm sure you know this. I was a little bit less familiar with this when I first started. Even like how to get a preview app running and get all the like dependencies installed and my local dev environment set up was really hard for me in a new company. And so I think it helps you build good partnership with your eng partners. And then it also helps you understand like the unspoken semantics of how like code gets pushed at your company and like expectations of deployment times and like preview builds and things like that.
Another quick question, like how do you guys have like design reviews or like you have to go present to Mike or like do you just present the code or how do you guys do that? Yeah.
It's interesting. We do have product reviews and we do have design crit, and sometimes we'll have design deep dives or design reviews. It's a mix. Sometimes you'll see Figma prototypes presented. Sometimes you'll see fully working apps presented. Sometimes you'll see a local preview presented. It kind of depends on kind of what the feature is at the time. And I do say this a lot to kind of other designers I work with now that the skill set of code is available to a lot of non-technical folks. You should just consider this as a new way you can present your work or a new way you can work. And similarly to the early questions for design or product, like should this be low fidelity? Should this be high fidelity? I think you should consider code the highest possible fidelity. So, and the effort it takes and kind of what feedback you get will change depending on which one you show.
Got it. Okay, got it. I mean, ultimately it's about like kind of getting a feel for what the user will actually see and feel in the product, right? So like You just make prototypes for everything. You make prototypes for the core user experience, I guess.
I think there are still some instances where I personally find it easier to be in Figma rather than in prototyping. This could be a limitation definitely of my own technical ability. But for bigger changes that are harder to do architecturally in code, and sometimes I'll ask Claude, like, hey, like how hard is this going to be to change? If it takes me like a minute to do it in Figma and it might take 30 minutes to do it in code, it does make sense more to do it in Figma. So there's still that trade-off I think we have today of where it makes the most sense given what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, Figma is surprisingly, I mean, my designers make fun of me, but like just trying to get auto layout to work is hard. Like I can't figure it out.
Definitely.
So Figma's not that easy either. Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely a power user tool, I would say.
This episode is brought to you by Linear. Let's be honest, most project management tools suck. That's why I love working with Linear, because they share my obsession for craft and quality. Linear is incredibly fast, beautifully designed, and comes with built-in support for AI agents like Cursor. As a PM, I love using Linear to capture customer feedback, draft PRDs, and manage development, and communicate across the organization. Product teams at OpenAI, Vercel, Brex, and Cash App all use Linear to build complex products at lightning speed. See for yourself by visiting linear.app/behindthecraft. That's linear.app/behindthecraft. Okay, now back to our episode. All right, so let's kind of like maybe walk through some of this process with like a real demo, right? Do you have like a little demo app you can show us?
Yeah, definitely. So let me walk through. Unfortunately, I can't share anything that I do internally, but I can show a little demo app we have called Claude Cafe. And you can kind of see the mocks right here of what it looks like. And I already have it open and running on Claude Code right now. So I'm in the repository, Claude Cafe. I have kind of Claude open and running. So the first thing I tend to do is ask Claude to help me preview this app. And so it's pretty straightforward. I just talk to Claude like I would my engineer. And I say, help me run this locally. I do think this is easier for some engineers. Like they might say, oh, I'll just do this in bash commands. But for me, I don't always know the packages that you need to install or the commands you need to run the app. And so I find this a lot easier. One feature I really like that we recently released that makes this very possible, that I've been using for months and has now only been available, I think, for the past month externally, is background bashes. And so you can kind of see here, it says Control B to run in background. Running a dev server, as you probably know, but maybe not all the non-technical folks don't know, is just an ongoing process. And so if you hit Control B, you can kind of see it runs in the background now, and it'll update you as it's going, but you can kind of keep chatting with Claude even as it's still running.
Oh, nice. So is that like basically having two agents going? Kind of?
A little bit, I would say. I mean, like right here, you can see that it's been successful. We do have the ability to run parallel agents. This just lets you run background bash commands. So anything that's like an ongoing command.
Got it. Okay, should we open a localhost and see how it looks?
Definitely. So we can see what it looks like now. Oh, sorry. It opened in another browser, but I can pull it in. This is what the app looks like. So you can see it's running on preview and it's the app.
It looks great, yeah.
So right away, I say like, from my eye, I can tell, oh, this doesn't look exactly how the app I designed did, right? Like the images, if you can see it, aren't necessarily properly aligned. The header is supposed to be left aligned. Like there's all these little details that I can see how it was implemented that way. And there's just like things that I would want to change to get it to that, I'd say like last 10% of polish. And so this is actually where I spend most of my time in Claude Code. And so we will have the app running, and there's a few different ways you can do this. So in a previous video, I've referenced using the Figma MCP server. I would say sometimes I do that if it's very polished, but Claude actually has vision capabilities. So I'll typically start, instead of using the MCP server, by exporting this as a PNG to my desktop. So let me send it to my desktop for now. It's there. And then I will drag and drop that into Claude. And I'll say, can you update the header and image alignment so it looks more like this mock?
Okay. Yeah.
It's like a little bit lower fidelity, but I think the Figma MCP server for me, sometimes I actually don't have it always logged in or set up properly. And switching between dev mode for me is just my personal preference of doing it through images. The other way I tend to do this, which is a little bit more advanced-ish, I would say, depending on where you fall on the spectrum of technical ability, is I'll actually go in web inspect mode. I'll see kind of where the alignment or class is, and then I'll direct Claude specifically to look at this page feature and then make the updates that way. So there's a lot of different ways you can kind of get into this workflow.
So like you actually paste the code here to take a look?
I will sometimes. I like to actually look at the classes or the way that it's rendered, and I'll tell Claude to search for that code line and update it to the one that I think it needs to be.
Okay, because it's like Claude has access to all this. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
I'd also say in this case, you saw that this kind of went directly to coding. This is actually not my typical workflow. Normally what I'll do is I'll actually go into planning mode first, because I think this is the best way to do it. And I'll be like, actually, can you provide an overview of the plan and your approach? Also, break down this task into easy to understand steps and changes. I sometimes add that last one, especially if I'm trying to make bigger changes, because Claude is kind of designed to be able to speak to you like you're a software engineer. I'm not a software engineer, so I often prompt for additional explanations.
Yeah, this is what I do too. I always get it to make a plan or make a to-do list and let me review the plan. It's exactly. Too overeager sometimes. You gotta,
Definitely. Especially if you're in auto accept mode, it'll definitely start going on its own way. This also helps you, I think, if you're learning to code, get a better understanding of the architecture of how a software engineer would think about making these changes, which is really helpful for me. So we'll see the changes coming in. Claude, of course, is very complimentary. You'll have a sleek new header. It's really nice. And then if this, I'll read through the plan here so you can kind of see it'll list the file where it's making the changes. It's updating the pattern heading. It's moving so it's left aligned. That's what I wanted it to be. I really like when it actually shows the CSS for me, actually, because it helps me know how to do it in the future.
Yep.
And, you know, this generally looks good to me, let's say. And then so I'll go yes, and auto accept edits modes. This is also your best friend if you're not necessarily understanding every line of code that's changing. Auto accept edit modes just lets Claude make the changes, and then you can come back and see the final product. One really fun thing that I like to do is watch the changes live. I know it's like sometimes breaks in between and they'll re-render, but I like to see things move around.
Yeah, it's great. That's why it's very important to get local host set up first so you can see what it's doing.
Absolutely. I think design is such a visual job that it's like much more helpful to get it all together.
Is this thing real, by the way? You guys actually have a Claude cafe?
No. I mean, I wish. We do have cafes at the office, and you can order drinks. I wish they were themed this way, but unfortunately, this is just an app that one of the designers on our team made for a demo.
Got it. I've been trying to do like a lot of like prototyping too, and oftentimes AI tends to make this like very same look, like this Shadcyan Tailwind CSS look with the purple backgrounds and stuff. Like how do you avoid this stuff? It's like super annoying. Yeah. Is it just using images and like giving more precise instructions?
Yeah, I think so. I tend to avoid using Claude or any AI models in general for like net new designs without any basis to start off with, because I think you do get that exact same styling. You could ask honestly any model and it'll give you a very similar styling. The tips that I would recommend are, one, I'll often reference parts of the site that exist already or inspiration that I have that I like the way it looks, and I'll drop it in as an image and say, hey, make it look like this. So an example is like a few weeks ago, I was adding a new setting to our Claude AI page. And instead of just asking it to generate a setting, I was like, hey, look at the existing setting page, specifically this setting, and re-implement it this way. That's the way I like it to look. Or if I'm doing it sometimes in Claude AI chat, I'll actually drop screenshots of sites that I really like, or like almost like a Pinterest board style inspo thing. I'll say like, make it look something similar to this.
Okay, kind of like a mood board, so it kind of understands what it's doing. Yeah, got it. Okay. And let's talk about, I noticed that you have a bunch of stuff in the output around like low risk, high risk. And maybe you can pull up your Claude.md file. I think you have a really great file.
Absolutely. Let me find it right now. This is what my Claude.md file looks like.
Yeah, this is a great file. So I've been using Claude.md, just typing init, and then it just like analyzes the code base. But I think this is way better. This is like Meaghan's Claude.md.
Yes.
We can walk through why you added all this stuff.
Yeah, definitely. So Claude.md is actually extraordinarily powerful as an ecosystem. I didn't fully understand it when I first started using it, but we made a lot of updates so that you could have multiple hierarchical Claude.mds. And so and Claude.md is kind of like shared knowledge that Claude can have access to about your repository. For our entire code base, we actually have lots of Claude.md files shared across the team. And these are checked into the repository. They're kind of shared with things like the structure. That's typically what you get when you get /inits that you mentioned. It like understands your code base. Over time, we also added a personal Claude.md file. So this is to my Claude running instance. It doesn't have to do with the code base. It actually runs for my global experience of Claude code running in any repository, and it's attached to me as a user. This is where initially I had actually asked the Eng team, I was like, hey, could we make a version of Claude Code that is directed specifically to product designers, because it'd be really amazing as a tool to use. And they said, oh, like, have you tried adding it to your Claude.md? Like, Claude is pretty good at following instructions. We think that you might be able to get pretty far that way. And so I worked with Claude to actually draft this Claude.md. I iterated on it a bit, and this is where I've landed up as a way to direct Claude to be a Claude for designers.
Okay, so it's like, I'm a designer. You gotta explain more stuff to me, and then I like the emojis. Like, there's a high risk modification.
Yes. I've definitely recently I was guilty of causing an incident. My very first one from pushing code to prod. Fortunately, it was caught very quickly and resolved, and everyone's really great here. It happens. Someone told me it happens to everyone. If you're pushing code to prod, you'll like cause an incident at one point. But I did add that in after.
But all the stuff you push to prod is like in PRs, right? Like does some engineer have to review it? Or?
Yeah, everyone's still reviewing it, but I think things get through a little bit. Sometimes things slip through the crack. It happens to everyone.
Got it. Yeah, this is great. And basically, it's okay. So this is in your project's root directory, or is this in your global?
This is in my global root directory. Yeah.
Okay. And basically, okay, let's kind of explain how Claude.md works. So basically, it puts this into context each time you start a new conversation. Or
Exactly. And so it will always have awareness, and it'll adhere to these quite like we prompted Claude, so it'll adhere to your Claude.md files. So my outputs frequently look very different than what the Eng team would look like. They're a lot more verbose and a lot more detailed than anyone else.
And I have a feeling that you played a pretty big role in shipping the new output styles feature. Did you play a big role in that? Or?
I did not actually. I would say that was a combination of a bunch of folks across the team who were more on our go-to-market side and marketing side and comm side, thinking about extending it even more into like a non-technical audience. So I was really excited when it came out because you can still use it, I think, alongside of your Claude.md. I felt the Claude.md was enough for me. And I think that's one of the beautiful parts about Claude Code. It's so permutable.
It's like very customizable. You can make it yours. Yeah.
Exactly.
But can you actually go back to that slide with the flow chart? Because I kind of want to talk about like a real example of a feature that you guys shipped. Like maybe you can share an example of like ideation stage all the way to launch and like how you work with Kat and like the engineers.
Yeah, let's think. Yeah. What's a good example of that? Why don't we take agents? I think that's a really good one. So Claude Code recently released sub-agents or agents. And what these are programmable agents that let you, run Claude codes in parallel. So this was actually, I think, a really great feature because it shows how like AI tooling in general allows for a lot of fluidities of rules. So agents was originally conceived as an idea by an engineer on our team, Sid, and he was really rapidly prototyping the idea. And I think Kat might have mentioned this in her session, but here at Anthropic, everyone uses Claude Code very often. So we're like our best dog fooders. Like we use the product all the time. We give feedback. And so he built the feature. He posted internally a demo of it working. And then he launched it to our internal working version of Claude Code. From there, I reached out to him. I was like, hey, this is a really cool feature. I started using it. I was like, I have a bunch of design kind of updates I would recommend. I think like we should highlight this even more. I think there's a way we could show parallel agents. And so we did some rapid iteration cycles with myself, another designer on the team, and Sid to kind of iterate on the feature and get it to a level of polish that we felt happy with. And then once it felt good, we prototyped it a little bit more with the team. A few other folks gave feedback who were using it, and then it was kind of ready to go. So I feel like a lot of the feedback cycle is actually using it ourselves.
Wow. Okay. So basically like Sid maybe spent a weekend or a couple of days just like prototyping himself, and he just shipped it to internal users first, right?
Yes, kind of exactly.
There's no spec or anything or like design or anything. He just shipped it.
Not for smaller features like that, no. I think it can happen pretty organically.
Okay. And then you guys went back and forth, and then you made it better. And then how did you know when it's ready to go? Like the internal people were like, hey, let's get this out.
I think like when we initially launch new features, we'll often get a lot of feedback from the team. You know, our teammates are our best sources of feedback and our most honest. And so you'll kind of see initially when we launch a new prototype, we'll get a lot of feedback on it as people discover it. And then over time, it'll slowly taper off because we've addressed all the bugs and features, and it just becomes a natural working part of the products. We do also look at analytics and adoption of features to see if they're being well received with ants, as we call them, or folks at Anthropic. And if we see that steadily growing and we see the negative feedback steadily going down, there's just a moment where we feel like, yeah, this is good to go. I also think we err on the side, which is always a little bit nerve-wracking for me, but it's been really beautiful to see, on releasing early and letting our community also give feedback, because we can continuously update and improve things as they go.
Oh, because you have like an early preview program or something?
Not even an early preview. We'll just release it early once it feels like it's reach a point of readiness where we'll get better feedback from our community, because we've gotten all the feedback we can from internal folks.
And then when you get ready to release it, the go-to-market is just like, maybe getting comms and part marketing involved and putting like a post out there and they just launch it.
Exactly. Often it'll be the engineer who built the feature themselves, making a little screen recording of them, of their feature, or they'll work with our DevRel team or our comms team, but it's all very, very fast.
That's great, because that's not how a typical company ships this stuff, right? Typical company is like, this waterfall thing, right? Where like you write a spec, you go debate about it internally, and then you go make a design, and then you hand it over to engineers, like here's a perfect design spec, and go build it. Maybe you guys still do that for like really big features, like enterprise or something. But it's way more fun the way that you guys do it.
I think so. One thing that I often reflect upon is like how fluid the roles have become on the team, and like how quickly you are to able to just like make the product better and make the product that you want it. Like the /explanatory / learn mode that you mentioned that was released a few weeks ago, that was actually a custom command, because we have custom / commands that you can kind of work on and customize yourself, that someone on the team built. And they're like, hey, I actually think this will be useful for a lot of other folks. And so they started to work on that in that direction. And that evolved into a product feature. I think one thing to note that I always really like that we still do is there's still experts on the team and what they do. So if a new feature is going out, the engineers will often reach out to myself or the other designer on our team, Nate, and say like, hey, can you give a quick pass on this? Like, it feels good, but we just want to make sure that it aligns with our system, and we'll stamp it. Often we'll just try it and use it. And similarly, if the designers are building a feature, we have code review for that to make sure that it's all kind of good and working.
Does Kat have like a spreadsheet that tracks all the features in progress? Or
Oh yes. She has a master spreadsheet of everything that's going on. We're always constantly trying to keep it up to date. And there are a lot of kind of bigger features that do follow a little bit more of a traditional product development process. But I would say while it follows that traditional process, the role of like who drafts that and like who's contributing to it is extremely fluid across our team.
I mean, that's the best, right? Where people don't have, like, people still have their expertise, but like people can just like cross functions and just do what's best for a product.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Maybe you guys should just use like a / command or something, like Cat can run it every morning, check the code base and see what kind of new features.
I think that sounds like it'd be incredible for her. I'm not sure how well that would work, because we often have like random ideas spinning out everywhere.
Got it. Okay. And I think you have one more slide on like some pro tips of using Claude Code.
Yes, definitely. Let me share that as well. So pro tips. These are my pro tips for Claude Code. I recommend these for folks who are getting started. One thing I will say is that these pro tips hinge initially on the idea that you're comfortable in terminal or CLI. So if you're not, my biggest recommendation there is actually to just chat with an engineer on your team. Like, no engineer is ever not going to be happy to explain to you how to use terminal or what terminal commands are. Even people who've used like CLIs their entire life might not know every single command out there. Another way to learn how to use CLIs is to just ask Claude AI in chat. Like, I'm frequently asking Claude AI how to do a thing before I open Claude Code in terminal, just to make sure I'm in the right place or I have the right Git branch, things like that. Sometimes I'll ask Claude Code in Claude Code to help me. It's kind of a little inception. But once you get there, these are the Claude Code specific key bindings or like best practices I would recommend. The reason I call it being comfortable with terminal is that a lot of these are designed for developers. So a developer is very comfortable and very familiar with these key bindings. So as you use terminal more, you'll be more familiar with them. But it might be a little bit new if you're not. So the first one here, Shift Tab to go between auto accept mode and plan mode. This is like my most used mode. I think I always start in planning mode whenever I'm doing something, just so I can make a plan with Claude and understand the changes that it's making. And then auto accept mode lets Claude kind of autonomously accept the code changes, and I'll wait till the final code changes are done before I'll review. MCP lets you connect to MCP servers. These give access to more tools that Claude can have. So the Figma MCP is one that a lot of designers use. A lot of folks also use a Playwright MCP to preview their app. That can also be really helpful. You can talk to your engineering team about which MCPs they have set up. I think it's a thing that's actually very valuable to share. Control V to paste images. I think I showed how I use that today. It's really just to show Claude what I'm working on. Escape to cancel is a big one. Just if Claude is doing something and it makes you nervous or you're not sure where it's going, you can just stop Claude's progress right away by hitting escape and it'll stop it. Double escape lets you go back in history, which I also really like. So if you sent a prompt and you didn't like where it went, you can hit double escape twice and like go back to that prompt and then see and then update the instructions, or you can see past instructions that you've sent to Claude.
Got it.
Dash resume or slash resume lets you re-access an old session. So if you like opened a Claude Code session, closed it, and then you want to get back into that task, you can use resume. And then slash memory to update your Claude.md file.
When you use the last one, slash memory, like when you have a new tip that you want to share, or like
yes, I use it a lot when I end up in a place where I wish I do a thing repetitively with Claude and I want Claude to just do it automatically. And so for a little bit, I did add preview my app before I start, or preview my app for every change, but that became a little bit too hectic. So I did remove that, and I'm constantly playing around with it to optimize Claude for my workflows. So in my most recent memory update, I actually asked Claude to look at the existing component library before it finalizes any implementation decisions to make sure that we're following design systems best practices.
Okay, got it. Okay. Yeah, like actually a lot of some of these other tools are like trying to add design system support. So does Claude Code just like support that natively, just like access the files and understand the files, or?
I think this is where like you can like design systems is the role that really beautifully covers design and engineering. And if the design systems team actually starts to design a system and a component library in mind with a coding tool or an AI collaborator reading through it, it actually is a lot easier than for Claude Code to be able to read through our documentation and implement features.
That makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, let me ask you some other random questions that I forgot to ask Kat. So like obviously a lot of the stuff depends on the quality of the model and like what the model team is doing, right? So how do you guys work with that team, like the AI researchers?
So I would say there are a few kind of dedicated work streams around Claude Code for like bigger features that we know we want to work on, or like bigger improvements that we see feedback from the community. And those have kind of dedicated pods within the research product team. And there's partnerships to continue iterating on them. That's one way. It's like the very standard way of just like we got feedback from the community or we noticed a thing and we want to kind of train the model to get better at this. Okay. The second way is something that we are kind of looking into around how we can help Claude Code help researchers better. So that's a second way that we partner really closely. Like the software development flow is so wide and widespread, but one thing we think we can do is to train Claude to be really good, not just at like production code, but also at researching. So that's another pod that we have. And then a third one is we're very bottoms up at Anthropic as a process perspective. So sometimes from the product team, sometimes with the research team, someone will have an idea of a thing that they want Claude to do. It'll spin up and they'll just start a mini pod of working together on a brand new thing.
That's great. Yeah, that's fun. Got it. Okay. And you probably have access to all like the early models and stuff. So like,
yes,
you probably have,
yes. We definitely try out all the models ourselves internally at first. And we get a lot of very strong feedback immediately if the model's not performing as well, because people will switch.
Got it. Okay, got it. All right, Meaghan. Well, this is super awesome. Yeah. So how do you think the design, maybe like the PM role will evolve, like, or is already evolving? I mean, I guess everyone is just kind of like a builder with their own specialty, or?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I feel like across tech, especially specifically if you're in a coding adjacent role, we're actually becoming more and more fluid in our responsibilities, if that makes sense. Historically, I used to talk a lot about the design PM fluidity, like depending on if your product manager is a lot more design oriented or your designer is a lot more product oriented. As you get more and more senior, or even in like smaller teams, you'll see the responsibility like really kind of become fluid. You'll see that with EMs as well. Like it'll become a little bit fluid around who does product strategy or things like that. And I think that's because the skill set of being more product minded grew over time, but the product manager was still the expert and the expertise and the decision maker in that. When it comes to these coding tools, I kind of see it very similarly, where now we all have kind of a skill set and ability to code. So that responsibility is a little bit more fluid. We can kind of lean into each other's roles and help each other out and collaborate a lot more. But the ultimate decision maker should still be the engineer, and the reviewer should still be the engineer. So it's more like fluidity and then an expansion of our skill set now. We just have another tool in our toolkit that we can reach for, which is code.
Yeah. And I also think there's also a very good trend around more senior designers like yourself choosing to stay in kind of like a builder role. Because previously you kind of have to become like a manager or something. Like you got to work on like some management stuff, right? But like, I feel like more and more now people who care about the product and the craft are more valued. I don't know, maybe I'm biased, but yeah. Have you seen that?
I don't know. I can't say if I've seen that personally. I would definitely believe it though. Like I myself probably spend an equal amount of time now in Claude Code as I do in Figma. And, I talk about this sometimes with folks at Anthropic. It's just so fun to build here because you can build so quickly that it's hard to imagine not wanting to be a builder. A lot of our managers at Anthropic are building themselves too, though. Like I think the manager role also has more access as well because you can get into these tools so much quicker.
Okay, so like let's say like I'm a designer and like I want to become like an AI native designer like Meaghan, like or like maybe get a job at Anthropic. Like how do I get ready?
Yeah. Okay. So I would say if you're like totally new to coding and it's something that you want to get into, my recommendation is honestly to just start, like just start using it because it's hard to know the unknown knowns. So you can first start with like Claude.ai and artifacts. That will actually give you a good understanding of like what it looks like to have a model that produces code. You can start, and then from there, I would recommend you go into Claude Code directly. It's a really great partnership if you have an eng partner to actually collaborate with this on, because your engineering partners will always be excited that you're wanting to code because it'll help them get faster. You'll learn a lot more. I think it's like a nice moment to build that partnership and that bridge. A few things that I did is I did take an intro to React and an intro to Tailwind class. Most of the changes I make are front end, and it helped me get a little bit deeper in the understanding of, how these libraries work and how they're rendered directly. Not a requirement, but I do think it helps to understand the code that's being implemented. And then to get into like the actual vibe coding and the actual kind of AI side of things, I would say the community is very open and collaborative right now. Like we're in that nice spot of new tech where people are just excited and sharing what they do. So X is a really good place. I would say GitHub is a really good place to learn. We have a few courses actually that we offer at Anthropic that teach you how to vibe code. Those are really great because there is a little bit of a skill to learning how to vibe code that's even different from just coding. It's like a separate own thing.
Yeah, like, just like, probably number one tip I have for people is just to like get to plan first. that's
absolutely.
Tip,
absolutely.
And also like another tip I have, and I don't do this a lot, it's just like after you make something, you just kind of ask it to explain how you did it, because then you can actually learn like what the code is actually doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's really, really helpful to actually get into the code itself. It also lets you do more complicated things in the future, and you can detect when Claude is wrong, because sometimes Claude will go like a direction that you need to course correct it a little bit.
Yeah. When it starts saying you're absolutely right, that's something is going on. Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool. All right. Well, Meaghan, where can people find you or learn more from you?
So you can follow me on X. My handle's a little bit complicated because my name is spelled complicated, but it's MEAG_Han, HAN_C. I will often share tips and tricks there on how I use Claude Code for non-technical folks. And I'll also share some of the launches that are upcoming and how I use them in a way that's maybe not necessarily geared directly towards technical developers. I also have gotten feedback that it's helpful for devs to learn there because then they can see how their non-technical peers are using Claude Code as well.
Yeah, I love your posts. Like they're very practical and like, I think, I posted that this thing, like Claude Code is kind of like, it's really just a really good agent. So it can, like, right now it's mostly used for coding, but it can be used for design, for product stuff,
Absolutely.
all kinds of stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, keep working on it. Keep working on it. I'm a power user. Yeah. All right, Meaghan. Thanks so much.